Before a single word of dialogue, before Ned Stark loses his head, before Dany hatches her dragons, the very first image Game of Thrones shows you is a symbol. Body parts in the snow, arranged deliberate geometric. The Night's Watch Rangers who find it have no explanation. Most viewers wrote it off as creepy White Walker stuff and moved on. That was a mistake. Because that image, that pattern, is a signature. And once you know whose signature it is, the entire show looks different. Let's start with the thing the show keeps showing you and never stops to explain. The spiral. It shows up in Season 1 in that opening scene. It shows up in Season 3 when Jon Snow and the wildlings find all the Night's Watch horses arranged in a massive 7-armed spiral at the Fist of the First Men. Mance Rayder looks at it and says, almost casually,
"Always the artists."
He says it like he has seen this before, like it is just something they do. Then in Season 6, Bran is taken back in time by the three-eyed raven and watches the children of the forest capture a man, bind him to a weirwood tree, and drive a blade of dragonglass into his chest. The man's eyes go blue. He becomes the first White Walker. He becomes the Night King. And if you look at the ground around him in that moment, the stones are arranged in a spiral. The exact same spiral. Then in Season 7, Jon takes Dany into the caves beneath Dragonstone and shows her ancient drawings left by the children of the forest. The spiral pattern is there too, carved into the rock alongside images of the alliance between the children and the First Men. And then in the Season 8 premiere, a young lord is found nailed to a wall with severed limbs arranged around him. Same pattern. Again. Here is what a Game of Thrones writer actually confirmed in an interview with the New York Post. The spiral was sacred to the children of the forest. They used it in their rituals. When they created the Night King at the center of that stone arrangement, the symbol became bound to his very existence. And then the Night King took that sacred symbol and turned it into something else entirely. The writer called it a blasphemy, like an upside-down cross. He is not decorating a battlefield. He is throwing his creator's most holy symbol back at them, made out of bodies. That is not what a mindless killing machine does. That is what someone with memory does, someone with grievance, someone who has been carrying something for thousands of years. So who was he before the dragonglass went in? The show never gives you his name. It never even tries. But the books George R.R. Martin wrote give you a legend. And that legend points directly at House Stark. In A Storm of Swords, young Bran Stark is sitting inside the Nightfort, one of the oldest and most feared castles on the Wall, and he remembers a story old Nan used to tell. She called him the Night's King. Note the spelling difference from the show's Night King, different name, different era, different character on paper, but the echoes are unmistakable. Old Nan's Night's King was the 13th Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, a warrior described as knowing no fear. And she said that was his flaw because all men must know fear. He fell in love with a woman beyond the wall. A woman with cold white skin and eyes like blue stars. He brought her back, declared himself king, ruled alongside her, and began sacrificing to the White Walkers. He was only defeated when the King of the North and the King beyond the wall joined forces, two sworn enemies who put aside everything to take him down. After he fell, every record of his reign was wiped. His name was erased from every book. He was removed from history so completely that his own house would not know they were related to him. Old Nan told different versions on different nights. Sometimes she said he was a Bolton, sometimes a Flint or an Umber or a Nori, but she always saved the real answer for last. She would pinch Bran on the nose and whisper that none of those were true, that the Night's King was a Stark of Winterfell, brother to Brandon the Breaker, the Stark king who brought him down. And then she would say that maybe his name was Brandon, that he might have slept in the very bedroom Bran slept in. Now, George R.R. Martin did clarify that the Night's King from the books and the Night King from the show are technically different characters. The show's Night King predates the Night's Watch by thousands of years. Martin said on his blog that the Night's King from the books is a legendary figure, not meant to be interpreted as literally alive today. The showrunners clearly borrowed from this legend. The thematic DNA is all over the show. And the evidence connecting the show's Night King to the Stark bloodline is not just legend, it is woven into what we see on screen across 8 seasons. The Night King's creation takes place during the conflict between the children of the forest and the First Men, a war that lasted roughly 500 years before they signed a peace agreement. The children needed a weapon powerful enough to end that war. They needed the most formidable man they could capture. Ned Stark says it plainly in Season 1. The blood of the First Men still flows in the veins of the Starks. Of all the great houses in Westeros, the Starks are among the oldest and most directly descended from that original population. They did not come from across the sea like the Targaryens, they were already there. So when the children needed the most powerful man available, a leader, a warrior, someone with a bloodline capable of holding the kind of power they were about to pour into him, who would they have reached for? Now look at the Night King. He does not command the dead like a general commanding soldiers with orders. He feels them. He is connected to every single white simultaneously across hundreds of miles. When Arya kills him in Season 8, every single white, every dead soldier, every giant, every undead creature in his entire army drops at the same instant. Not because the chain of command collapsed, because the link through all of them was severed at once. That is not strategy. That is warging on a scale that makes Bran look like a beginner. Where does the gift of warging come from? The oldest bloodlines of the North. The first men, the ancestors of the Starks. The Night King is the most powerful warg who has ever existed, embedded inside a body built from dragonglass and dark magic. And that gift had to come from somewhere. Now let's go underground. Because the architecture of this theory gets cold and strange in the crypts beneath Winterfell. The crypts are older than the castle itself. According to the lore, Winterfell was built after the first long night, which means the deepest levels of those crypts predate the structure above them. There are statues down there so ancient that the stone faces have worn away entirely. Statues in the crypts are not for everyone. They are only carved for kings of the North and lords of Winterfell, the people who mattered enough to rule, and the crypt goes deep. The lowest level is described in the books as partly collapsed, as though something happened down there that was too catastrophic to leave intact. Here is the detail that almost nobody talks about. The tradition of placing iron swords across the laps of those statues exists for a specific reason. According to the books, the iron is there to keep vengeful spirits from rising, not to honor the dead, to contain them. The people who built this place were afraid of something already inside it. And in the books, Old Nan tells the Stark children that the White Walkers fear iron. So the deepest section of the oldest Stark burial ground is specifically warded against the same creatures the Night King commands. Ask yourself why. What was already inside Winterfell's crypt that required that kind of containment from the beginning? If there was ever a Stark who became the Night King, you would not find his statue down there. His name was erased. His face removed from history, just like the Night's King in Old Nan's story. The empty space in the crypt is not absence, it is evidence. The Night King does not hate everyone equally. He targets Bran. From Season 6 forward, beyond raising the dead and marching south, his singular focus is the three-eyed raven. After he grabbed Bran's arm during that unsanctioned solo vision, he broke the magical protection around the cave. He wiped out the children of the forest sheltering there. He killed the original three-eyed raven. He killed Hodor. He never said a word. He did not need to. Bran tells us in Season 8 that the Night King has hunted the three-eyed raven before many times across many centuries. This is personal. This is not just a threat assessment. Here is the theory assembled in full. The children of the forest were losing a war against the First Men. They needed a weapon powerful enough to change the outcome. So they looked for the most capable man they could find, a warrior, a leader, someone from an ancient bloodline with a gift the children themselves would have recognized. The ability to warg, to feel the world around them at a level beyond normal human perception. They captured him, they drove dragonglass into his heart. They made him into something ancient and terrible. But the transformation was not total. Whatever fragment of memory survived, whatever trace of the man he used to be, it held onto something. He left spirals at every site he touched, not randomly, but deliberately, taking the most sacred symbol of the people who made him and stamping it onto corpses as a message that has been running for thousands of years. He fixated on the three-eyed raven who holds all memory and all sight. He marched on Winterfell, the seat of his bloodline, not as an invader but as something returning. He is the most terrible version of what a Stark becomes when everything human is stripped away and only the power remains. And now here is the detail from the end of the show that deserves more attention than it ever got. After the long night ends, after the battle is over, Bran Stark becomes king. Not Jon, Bran, the boy who can see everything. The boy who inherited the same ancient gifts, the warging, the green sight, the connection to every tree and every living creature across the continent. The boy who openly admits he is no longer entirely the person he used to be. The boy who feels almost nothing recognizably human anymore. The Night King was the most powerful warg who ever existed, locked inside a form built to end the world. Bran is the most powerful warg alive, now sitting on a throne that nobody saw coming. One became the three-eyed raven, one became something else. Both had the same gift, both ended up ruling. There is something the Starks have always said: there must always be a Stark in Winterfell. For 8,000 years, one was always there. He just stopped being recognizable as one. The Night King did not come from nowhere. He came from the north, from the oldest blood in Westeros, from a lineage that carries a gift so deep it survived even the destruction of the man himself. The children built their weapon from the strongest available material, and the strongest material in the north has always been a Stark. The show never confirmed it. The cancelled prequel series Blood Moon might have answered it. HBO filmed a pilot reportedly costing around $30 million before scrapping the whole thing. House of the Dragon mentions the Song of Ice and Fire prophecy but has not touched the White Walker origins yet, so the question is still open. Which means the evidence is all we have, and the evidence is everywhere if you know what to look at. The spiral, the crypts, the warging, the stare at Hardhome, the march to Winterfell. He was not the enemy of the Starks, he was the original one. If this hit differently than you expected, drop a comment below and tell me which piece locked it in for you. And if you have not subscribed yet, there are more theories like this one waiting, and some of them are going to completely reframe how you see this show.